Tenebrae service. If you're not familiar with that, it is a service of shadows or a service of darkness. The purpose of the Tenebrae service is to recreate the emotional aspects of the Passion story. Things like the betrayal, the abandonment, and all of the agony of all the events leading up to his death on the cross. And it will kind of seem like it's unfinished, and it's supposed to, because the story really isn't finished until Easter Sunday. At the very end of the service, it will be dark. We'll have enough lights on for you to be able to see on your way out. But we do ask that you leave in silence. Now, if you would join me for the call to worship.
We don't have it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Then I guess I'll do all parts. On this night we gather to remember. We open our hearts and minds to relive the pain and the victory which have become for us the doorway to the eternal. We recognize the shadows which encroach on every life and meditate on that one moment in history when the shadows seem to extinguish the light entirely. We come in awe and in worship, for the darkness has never and will never overcome the light revealed in the human life and death of Jesus Christ.
When they had sung the hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them, "You will all become deserters because of me this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." Peter said to him, "Though all become deserters because of you, I will never desert you." Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, "Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you." And so said all the disciples. Then Jesus went with them to the place called Gethsemane, and he said to the disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and began to become grieved and agitated. Then he said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and stay awake with me." And going a little further, he threw himself on the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup be passed from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want." Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So, could you not stay awake with me 1 hour? Stay awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again he went away for the 2nd time and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." Again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the 3rd time, saying the same thing. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." Matthew 26:30-46.
I am Salome, the mother of James and John. He was just a unique boy, my nephew, cousin to my sons, James and John, but more of a friend to them, really, and to me. He was always caring, always serving, always putting others first. I remember when I asked him if my boys could sit on the thrones with him in his kingdom, one on his left and one on his right. Salome, he said to me, the great ones in God's kingdom are the ones who serve. Even I have come to serve and to lay down my life. I felt rather humbled that day. It's incredible that in his time of agony, praying all alone, the ones he serves so well couldn't serve him in return. Not for one short hour. There they were, my sons and Peter, all asleep, while Jesus cried and sweated blood, and none of us were any better. Alone he prayed, "Take this cup away from me, but not my will, Father. Yours be done."
While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With them was a large crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him." At once he came up to Jesus. "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you are here to do." Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and arrested him. Suddenly, one of those with Jesus put his hand on a sword, drew it, and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen in this way?" At that hour Jesus said to the crowds, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as though I were a bandit? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. But all this has taken place so that the scriptures of the prophets may be fulfilled." Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. Matthew 26, 47 through 56.
I am John. That was a dark night. We didn't expect those terrible things. Perhaps we should have foreseen it and prepared for it. Maybe then we would have reacted differently, stood with him through it all. But we didn't understand. So there we were, Peter, James, and me, fast asleep, oblivious to his pain, and suddenly he's waking us up. And there's Judas, and lights, and swords, and soldiers, and they're arresting Jesus. We were no match for them. It would have taken us too. But we were terrified. So we ran away, all of us, and left him to face their swords alone.
Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, in whose house the scribes and the elders had gathered. But Peter was following him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest. And going inside, he sat with the guards in order to see how this would end. Now the chief priests and the whole council were looking for false testimony against Jesus, so that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last, 2 came forward and said, "This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days." The high priest stood up and said, "Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?" But Jesus was silent. Then the high priest said to him, "I put you under oath before the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Jesus said to him, "You have said so. But I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has blasphemed. Why do we still need witnesses? You have now heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict?" They answered, "He deserves death." Then they spat in his face, they struck him, and some slapped him, saying, "Prophesy to us, you Messiah. Who is it that struck you?" Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. A servant girl came to him and said, "You also were with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied it before all of them, saying, "I do not know what you are talking about." When he went out to the porch, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." Again, he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." After a little while, the bystanders came up and said to Peter, "Certainly, you are also one of them. Your accent betrays you." Then he began to curse, and he swore an oath, "I do not know the man." And at that moment, the cock crowed. Then Peter remembered what Jesus had said, "Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." And Peter went out and wept bitterly. Matthew 26, verses 57 through 75.
I am Peter. What was I thinking? I expected so much more for myself. Oh, at the table, it was easy. When Jesus talked about being betrayed and arrested and dying, I was angry and protective. "I'll fight for you, Lord," I said. "I'll die for you." I thought he was just frightened and emotional when he replied, "No, Peter, before the cock crows, you will deny knowing me 3 times. Deny him? I wouldn't have thought it possible. That was then. Now I know it's true. When it finally came down to it, I couldn't fight for him. I couldn't die for him. I couldn't even answer the question. Yes, I know him. I follow him. I believe in him." And as they led him away, he looked at me. In those eyes, I expected anger and judgment. But there was only love. In his eyes, there was only ever love.
When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people conferred together against Jesus in order to bring about his death. They bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate the governor. When Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he repented and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. He said, "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood." But they said, "What is that to us? See to it yourself. Throwing down the pieces of silver in the temple, he departed, and went away and hanged himself. Matthew 27, verses 1 through 5.
I'm Judas. I don't know when it happened, but things changed somehow. At first, he was strong, confident, outspoken. I had such high hopes. Finally, a leader to throw off the Romans. But just when the time was right, at the height of his popularity, he changed. He withdrew. He became quiet, almost introspective. I thought a bit of a push would help him reach for greatness. You know, pass on a bit of information about his whereabouts, make a little money on the side for me, and then watch him rise to victory when they came to take him. Only it didn't work out that way. He let them take him. You'll betray me, Judas, he said. I wonder how he knew. I thought I'd been so discreet. I didn't expect it to turn out the way it did. What have I done?
But the chief priests, taking the pieces of silver, said, "It is not lawful to put them into the treasury, since they are blood money." After conferring together, they used them to buy the potter's field as a place to bury foreigners. For this reason, that field has been called Field of Blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of the one on whom a price had been set, on whom some of the people of Israel had set a price, and they gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord commanded me. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You say so." But when he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he did not answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many accusations they make against you?" But he gave them no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Now at the festival, the governor was accustomed to release a prisoner for the crowd, anyone whom they wanted. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Jesus Barabbas. So after they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Who do you want me to release for you? Jesus Barabbas, or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" For he realized that it was out of jealousy that they had handed him over. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that innocent man, for today I have suffered a great deal because of a dream about him." Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus killed. The governor again said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what should I do with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" And all of them said, "Let him be crucified." And then he asked, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified!" I've read from Matthew 27, verses 6 through 23.
I am Mary Magdalene. People were curious about my devotion to Jesus, but it's easy to understand, really. I lived with accusations all my life. Adulterer, prostitute, mad woman, evil, possessed. They said it all and more. And much of it was true. But Jesus, he didn't accuse, he didn't judge, he didn't make any demands or require anything. For the first time, someone saw the past, the pain and brokenness to my soul, and gave me the freedom I longed for. Of course, I was devoted. Ironic then, that the one who accepted and included all without accusation should be forced to hear lies about himself, should stand alone and face all those pointed fingers. The one whose only crime was acceptance, sentenced to death on the basis of false accusations by the ones who he sought to love and heal.
So when Pilate saw he could do nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took some water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves. Then the people as a whole answered, His blood be on us and our children. So he released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters and gathered the whole cohort around them. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head. They put a reed in his right hand and knelt before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! They spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. After mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. Matthew 27, 24 through 31.
I am Thomas. Somehow, I've developed a reputation for doubt and questioning, a little unfairly, I think. But I do confess to being confused and uncertain, especially at the end. I mean, he healed the sick, he raised the dead. The whole nation was eating out of the palm of his hand. Then suddenly, they were shouting, Crucify him! And with all his power, he just stood there. Then, when the soldiers mocked him, he took it all. They stripped his body, torn from the terrible flogging, and spat on and pretended to worship him as king, with a crown of hard Judean thorns. They hit him, spat on him, and pulled out his hair and beard. How was I to understand this? He could have snuffed them out in a heartbeat, but he didn't. He just let them mock.
As they went out, they came upon a man from Cyrene called Simon. They compelled this man to carry his cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull, they offered him wine to drink mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes among themselves by casting lots. Then they sat down there, and they kept watch over him. Over his head they put the charge against him, which read, This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. Then 2 bandits were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, You, who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross. In the same way, the chief priests also, along with the scribes and elders, were mocking him, saying, "He saved others. He cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now, if he wants to." For he said, "I am God's Son." The bandits who were crucified with him also taunted him in the same way. Matthew chapter 27, verses 32 through 44.
I am Mary, mother of Jesus. Should I have known this time would come? Sure, there had been death threats against him when he was a baby, and he talked about his death more than once. I should have seen it, but nothing can prepare a mother to watch her child die. I don't know how I got through that day. My son, sentenced to crucifixion, the slowest and most agonizing death. Executed with thieves? My son, who had done nothing wrong. And in the face of it all, he forgave them. He forgave all of us.
Crucify him! King of the Jews! Give us Barabbas! Crucify him! Crucify him! Crucify! King of the Jews! Crucify! Crucify! Give us Barabbas! We have no king but Caesar. You crucify yourself, come down. Yes, sir. Call on the angels and they'll save you.
Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Crucify him. Destroy the temple 3 days. Crucify him. Here's your king.
Here's your king.
Yes, king.
You son of God.
Give us Barabbas.
Step down and save yourself.
Step down, king.
Into thy hands I commit my spirit. It is done.
My God, what have we done?
From noon on, darkness came over the whole land. Until 3 in the afternoon, about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried with a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, "This man is calling for Elijah." At once one of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink. But the other said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last. Matthew 27, 45 through 50.
At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After his resurrection, they came out of the tombs and entered the holy city and appeared to many. Now, when the centurion and those with him who were keeping watch over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what took place, they were terrified and said, "Truly, this man was God's Son." Matthew 27, 51 through 54.
Go in peace. May Jesus Christ, who for our sake became obedient even unto death, even death on the cross, keep you and strengthen you this night and forevermore. Amen.